All right, so we're on. Welcome everybody. Welcome to Finish Your Book in 2023, a free webinar co-hosted with BookBaby and me, Janna Lopez. I have a business in Santa Fe, which we're going to talk more about, called Land of Enchantment Writing. And I'm going to tell you more about what I do and why I'm here and how I got together with BookBaby and how we're all so very excited to be able to present this for you and with you today. We're going to have so much to talk about, and I'm going to do my best to remain clear and concise. And I recognize first and foremost that I would not be here if not for you. As all of the registrations were coming in and all of you hopeful writers and authors were entrusting your time and your energy with me and with BookBaby, I was marveling at how incredible it is that there are so many people out there with dreams, big dreams to finish a book, big dreams to express the things they most care about, big dreams to take the risk, take the chance, and put themselves out there and do something that most people will only think about, talk about, and never actually do anything about. The main things which you're going to hear more about is showing up for yourself and what that looks like. So when we think about finishing a book and the goal, I also asked where you were in your process. Some of you said you're right at the beginning. Some of you said you're somewhere in the middle. Some of you said that you're nearly done. And so I did get a lot of comments about where people are, where are they stuck, what hangs them up. And we're going to address all that and more. So actually over 900 of you have said yes today. 900 people registered for this. So whether you're watching it live or you're going to be viewing this later, thank you so much. And I'm excited that you're here. And my main intention for today is to give you at least one or two things that you will be inspired by to do something different or more meaningful for you to help you get closer to finishing your book. I realize there's going to be a lot of information out there that's going to tell you the tactical, the logistical, all of the little nuances of printing and production. And I will give you all those resources just with BookBaby. BookBaby alone has all those resources. But for me, my intention today to be here with you is all about inspiration, helping you get clear, finding a path towards confidence, giving you something that moves the needle forward so that you can actually start to envision how you can get your book done. So I want to invite you, if you can, get a pen and paper, take some notes, avoid all the distractions that are going to be coming at you because we all have distractions. So get a pen and paper, hang out, and take some notes. So first, what I'm going to do is share a little bit of background about me and how I'm sitting here with you and how I got connected to BookBaby. And so I'm going to ask that you follow along because my path of being here in front of you really is a path about a writer, and a writer who had a dream and a writer who struggled. Let's just say that's being kind. I definitely struggled when it came time to writing my book. So then I'm going to walk you through a few of my core teachings that will hopefully give you inspiration. I have a few people here with me that are going to hop on that I've worked with who are either have just finished a book, close to finishing a book, or just beginning to do a book. So I've got you covered. I've got people here who are just like you in every stage of the process. And then I'm going to introduce you to Andre Kaliahana, who is the blog editor for BookBaby, and he's going to give you some information about some resources. So yeah, we're going to have a great time. And so just hang out and take some notes and we'll see where it goes. So how did I end up with BookBaby? 5 5 years ago, I had a dream of creating a book. I had a dream about telling a story of people like myself who struggled with things in midlife that related to loss, grief, job changes, divorce, disease diagnosis. I had gotten diagnosed with MS, you name it. I called them the 7Ds: divorce, destruction, disease. And I was really just thinking about, what is it about this time in somebody's life that feels so isolating and so lonely? Maybe some of you are writing books about your own paths and your own experiences where you have something that you've been through and you went to go look for information related to whatever it was that you had been through, and you couldn't find what you were looking for. And that was similar to what I was going through. So I talked about writing a book. I thought about writing a book. I dreamt about writing a book, but the more I talked about writing a book and the less I wrote, the worse about myself I felt. It was awful. I mean, there's nothing like that pressing down feeling when you keep telling everybody you're doing something and everybody's waiting, has all these expectations. And the more you're expected to do that thing, the less you are able or wanting to do that thing. And I think that's true, especially with writing. And like you, I had so many expectations about what I thought a book should be. There were so many judgments around what I thought I was supposed to do. I felt like an imposter by calling myself a writer and not actually writing because I was so paralyzed with fear and judgment and expectation and stuck. But yet I knew I really wanted to do this. So I went to a conference in Portland, Oregon, where I lived at the time. And Stephen Spotts, who is the president of BookBaby, was actually the keynote speaker at this event. This was probably, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, I want to say. And so being as how I had this dream and I really wanted to do something about it, I actually went up to him after the conference and introduced myself. And he was so nice and he was so gracious. And in his talk, he started to talk about how self-publishing really is the way for authors, writers, people that have stories to tell, to connect to their own stories and do it in a way that provides them freedom. Because when you self-publish, you can do anything you want. And somehow the light bulb went off. I didn't have to worry about schlepping my wares to agents and publicists and publishers and getting rejection letters. I imagined all the red ink on my manuscript that my imagined editor was going to be giving me. And the more I learned and did research about the publishing world, the more I was disillusioned with how far it has strayed from actually enabling people to tell their stories and how much of a business it became. So once I knew I had freedom, I was like, the light bulb went off and I could do anything I wanted. And somehow that was the first step for me to recognize that my story was always only going to be my own and for me. And that set the wheels in motion. So I've followed BookBaby. I followed all of the ways they engaged with meaningful content, the way they were so supportive, and one thing led to another. And I gave myself a writing sabbatical when I came to Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I am now. But at that time, I was still living in Portland. And I just locked myself up for 3 weeks and did nothing but write. And I want to say to you, I was terrified. The idea of actually giving myself that space, that allowance, without guilt, without feeling like I was doing something at somebody else's expense by giving myself that space to write. I wasn't being indulgent. It was actually the thing that saved me and is the core of everything I teach now. I told myself, you deserve to get to know who you are for at least this one time in your life. Give yourself that chance to do that. And so I looked at writing and the book as nothing more than a conversation with myself. That I could sit there and start to have a dialogue and a conversation with who I was, what I felt, what I believed in. And it was interesting. For some reason, writing then became a thing that I didn't have to worry about who was going to read it, who was going to judge it, who I was going to piss off by including in my book. I didn't have any of those pieces of baggage that had been, I carried around on my back all the time that kept me paralyzed from actually writing. And so it was liberating. And the more I started to think of this idea of writing as a conversation with myself, the more free I became in whatever it was I wanted to write. And from that, in those 3 weeks, because I just switched my approach to what I thought writing should be, who it's for, what it can do, without any of the expectations, I ended up writing 46,000 words in that 3 weeks. I couldn't believe it. And more importantly, I got to really know myself through the writing. I could start to like myself. I laughed at myself with what I was writing. I was crying when I was writing certain things. And it was not about who was going to read it, who it was going to be for, what it was going to do. It was only for me. And that became the purpose. And I learned so much from that time. I really did learn so much about that time. And fast forward, after going through the divorce, after figuring out my life, after COVID, as we all know, completely turns every single thing we thought about our lives upside down. Then what? Where do you go? Well, I came to Santa Fe, New Mexico. That's where I came because I loved it here so much. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you. So the first thing is I published, these are the 2 books that I've published with BookBaby. The first was the memoir that I talked about writing called Me, My Selfie, and I. And then the next book was a poem collection, which I never thought I would write, but I did, and I love it, and I'm in love with it. And it's called Winsome and Fuckdemonium. Yes, it's a word I made up on my own because I can. And so I want to show you, though. So I finished these 2 books, and I'm actually working on 2 more. And my next book is called The Art and Invitation of Self-Conversation. Writing that moves you beyond fear into freedom. And that is my passion, helping people figure out how to tap into what it is that they believe in, love, care about, think about, want to explore, and that writing is the bridge between themselves and this world that awaits them. And so I'm so passionate about helping people do that. So that's why I'm here. So I'm going to scroll. This is where I live. This is my view. And when people come here for writing retreats, I now lead writing retreats. People from all over the country will come and I will spend 3 days with them, 4 days with them, and we will work and we will hike and we will check out this beautiful place. But something about just having peace and quiet and something as beautiful as this really has opened up my writing life. And this is me. This is my yard. This is where I work. This is where I take you, my retreat participants. We go up on the hill behind the house and we write and we watch the clouds roll by. And it's amazing. It's so beautiful. And so now what I do full time is I really help people tap into the deepest parts of themselves that wants to write, that get stuck and they don't know where to begin. So they come here, we write, we spend a few days, and it's really amazing. And so people come from all over the country and all walks of life. And it's just so beautiful here. The clouds are always rolling by. So now to you, that's enough about me. But I saw this. This was actually on BookBaby's post. How many of you can relate to this? Now we'll find out who's been keeping me from writing. Okay, Brian raised your hand. Sharon raised her hand. Yes. How many of you can relate to this? It's so amazing. Now, what I want to share with you is that for whatever reason, I mean, I've heard hundreds of reasons, dozens of reasons, but we are the ones that keep ourselves from writing the most. We are the ones that stop us from connecting to our deepest, most beautiful, most honest, most uniqueness of who we are. And so I want to tell you, how many of you relate to this? Expectations. For whatever reason, we are taught that writing has to be a certain way. There are nightmares of red pens from my teachers and professors who have circled and have dismissed and criticized. And so for whatever reason, layer upon layer upon layer upon layer, we're embedded with this idea of what it has to be and the weight of that and the expectation of that. It can be stifling at best, paralyzing at worst in terms of our own creativity. The second thing that stops people from writing is judgment. Judgment's a big one. We judge so much. I got an email from Brent, who is attending this webinar. I'm not sure if you're on now, but he is working on a book about his teaching guitar playing. And he said it was so, he was motivated and he was writing. And then all of a sudden he lost his mojo because he thought nobody would relate or nobody would like it or it would be criticized. So the feeling about others judging us is like this, like it just presses down. It's so heavy, so heavy. Yes, 8 of you raising your hands. I get it. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. And then the other thing, so we have expectations, judgment, fear. People are really afraid to sit down and put their deep thoughts or feelings or expressions or creativity or whatever it is that they imagine. And I feel like this is true, whether you're working on a memoir, fiction, nonfiction. There's something about putting stuff on paper that makes it real. And then all of a sudden we leave ourselves open into the world for the scrutiny. One thing I'm going to tell you, if you get nothing else other than this out of today, yes, people are going to criticize and judge your work, and so what? I mean, I put my work out. By the time I was done with this conversation with myself, it was so amazing, so deep, so profound, so interesting, so unimaginably surprising. I had gotten everything I had wanted and needed out of that book. And so I feel like, yes, there's always going to be people who are going to tell you it's not good. There's always going to be people who are going to tell you how to correct your grammar. There's always going to be people who are going to tell you that how they would have done it. And I have accepted that as fact. Now, the way I've evolved myself as a writer, I have total freedom now. When I write something, I put it out. I want people to like it. I hope people will like it, but I do not care if you like it or you don't, because whatever you're going to put on to me is about you. It's not about me and my expression. And so looking at how to evolve the approach of what it is that we're doing. Now, I know I can sit here and say this, but I've had years of practice, but I've also been working with people. And so I would love to hear from, let's call on Cindy Van Loo. She is somebody that I'm working with right now, who just yesterday uploaded her manuscript that she had been working on for decades. She was afraid. She didn't know how she was going to do it. And she came across me and she came to a retreat that I had done in April. Now, here we are, January, only a handful of months later. And yes, she has found all of her courage and confidence, and we've gone through the process. So congratulations, Cindy.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, hello, everybody. As Jana said, my name is Cindy Van Loo, and I'm a soon-to-be published first-time author. And I just want you to know that what you think is impossible is possible, because I'm living proof of that. And you can get your manuscript to a publisher in less than a year. In fact, mine was 8 months. But it was something I had worked on for many years. And I never even considered myself a writer until I met Jana. And because all of the fears and the stories you tell yourself that she just went over. And I never dreamed I would ever publish a book. But here I am. And it took me 20 years to get here. But it went by fairly quickly. But I started my book in 2003 when my son was incarcerated in prison. And I felt it healing to write words and to express what I was going through as a mother at the time. But the story was still unfolding. And for the next 20 years, lots of twists and turns and challenges. And I got stuck like many people do. But I felt like after I divorced in 2018, some baggage was lifted and I felt a freedom to begin writing again. And I dug out my manuscript and I just started writing. And the journals I kept for years, I incorporated into my writing. But I wanted to finish the book and I didn't know how. And it was only by chance that one day as I was scrolling through Facebook, I saw Jana's post about a retreat on the Oregon coast. And so I felt like it was just divine timing because it called to me and it made me sign up. And so I went to the retreat and I was shaking like a leaf when I walked in the door because I didn't know a soul. And I hadn't seen Jana for many, many years. We were just casual acquaintances. And I felt like an imposter. I felt not good enough. I didn't feel like I was a writer, yada, yada. I didn't feel like I should be there, but something made me stay. And by the end of the weekend, I was excited after Jana quickly calculated in her head that I could have a book in my hand by Christmas. And I thought, wow, and by Christmas. And I just kept that vision in my head. It's like, I am going to get this book done by Christmas. Well, we were close. It's in January, but Christmas came. And so then I had a few delays, and then after that, I went to her one-on-one retreat in Santa Fe, which she was just showing you where she lives. And it was beautiful. And it just felt magical. And so now I know why she calls her business the land of enchantment, because it really is enchanting.
And I want to add to Cindy right now that it took her showing up for herself and having the belief that there was something there, even if she didn't know what it was. And that's what I want for you all to think about right now. And so switching gears, let's talk about clarity. If you could take a minute and just quickly jot down, if you understand, why are you writing? Are you writing because you're looking to do a business book that your hope is going to fulfill your business? I have a dear friend, Cheryl, and she's probably on here now. Hey, Cheryl, who's writing a gorgeous book that is going to talk about her ancestral family, her Polish family. And she's gone through to dig up the roots of her family history. I have people who write memoirs about disabilities, surviving diseases. So, and maybe it's just something that you feel like you need to do. Maybe you're not even clear on what you're doing or why you're doing it, depending on where you are in the process. But why are you writing? What is it about writing for you that connects to you? Because all we can do is find our own individual spaces and places and voices that resonate with us. So why are you writing? Not knowing why you write is one of the reasons why we don't. If we're not clear, in Cindy's case, she knew she just had to do this. It was something that carried with her for 20 years. The other thing I want to add here is that one of the ways we stop ourselves is because we think we're writing for other people, or we're already writing into an audience, that an imagined audience that exists out there. There's always going to be times when you're going to need to write for professional purposes. There's always going to be times when you need to write for emails or letters, or, so knowing the key differences of your writing applications and purposes is going to be super helpful. The kind of writing I help people do, the kind of writing that I guide people towards, and I want them to learn for themselves. It's not about the Jana method, but it's about helping them figure it out for themselves, is the writing that connects you to you. The writing that you're doing that is so free that you have no expectations of who's going to read it, where it's going to go, and that 100% of the time, whatever you're writing is going to surprise you. This is such an amazing form of writing. There is a difference to me between journaling and a conversation with yourself. The kind of writing I'm talking about, a conversation with yourself, is not journaling. Because even journaling, it's a beautiful form of writing. I'm not criticizing it at all. It's just not what I'm talking about. But even journaling, you're reporting on the facts. You're talking about what happened. Oh, I had a hard day. So-and-so called. I'm really hungry. I'm tired. I don't want to deal with the laundry. We're just reporting on the facts most of the time. We can get to a level of depth in journaling, but I think what I want to clarify here is just knowing the differences in your writing applications will open up some freedom for you. And then as far as clarity goes, the last thing I want to add here is how to get clear with your intentions. And that's why. It goes back to why. So the number one of the 4 C's, which I'm going to give you today, is clarity. Why are you writing? And under that, it includes not knowing why we write is what stops us, knowing the key differences of what we're writing for, and how to get clear intentions. This is the first step of getting finished. If you're stuck on this part 1, let's figure it out. Let's get beyond this so you can get moving and writing. And keeping in mind, you're going to have the committee of everybody telling you what to do, even your own committee. You shouldn't do this. You can't do this. This isn't important. What do you have to say? Who's going to care? You don't have a degree. It's not worth it. Why are you even wasting your time? I mean, I've said it all. I have a committee. I would say there's probably about 12, like a boardroom. When I imagine my committee of everybody who's got something to say about my writing life. But what do you have to say about your own writing life? I mean, it's such an interesting question. When I start working with people, they look at me like so confused, like nobody's ever asked me that. In fact, I've never asked myself that. So getting clear. The second thing we have to address, it's the big elephant in this room, is confidence. Confidence is the second C. It's the second thing. So what stops you from writing? Do you know? What stops you from writing? And, like the Scooby-Doo dude that took the mask off, it's ourselves. I didn't have a lot of confidence, even though I had written my whole life. I never called myself a writer. And that's sad. I think that's sad. I think about all of you out there who have beautiful stories, beautiful dreams. You're probably amazing in what you create. And I think, like, if Dr. Seuss would have put his books together and said fox on socks, locks and box, and he thought, oh my God, that sounds stupid. Can you imagine what the world would have been like if he would have had no confidence in what he was writing? And there's plenty of articles that I've read, and I may not know the author, but I have torn them up. I've put them on a refrigerator. I've saved them for 20 years. I've schlepped them with every time I've moved in a box. And so you have to believe you never, ever know how your words are going to connect with somebody else, how your words are going to give to somebody else who needs them just in those moments. And the confidence is going to keep you from giving your gifts to the world. If the lack of confidence, I should say, it will keep you from ever sharing the greatness of whatever it is that you've got to give. So what stops us from writing? Sparring with old beliefs and fears. Huge, huge. Most of my work is helping people unlearn what they've learned about writing. And the number one thing comes down to confidence every time. Also, when it comes to confidence, the judgment and comparison and the audiences that don't exist. I've already thrown myself under the bus for these supposed audiences who were going to read my book. I projected so much out there about who was going to read it and what they were going to say, and it killed the confidence. And then one thing I'm going to tell you right now, this is one of my core, most fundamental teachings, and everybody I work with, is learning how to turn expectations into invitations. And I'm going to explain this. This is the number one thing that people start to move from not having confidence and having fear and moving towards freedom and writing and completion and their books and finishing things that they've started. And that is changing expectations into an invitation. So what does that mean? It means that every time I sat down to write, I was expected to. I am not of the mindset of the artist's way. And there's plenty of people out there that say you have to write every day at the same time. Now that may work for you. And if it does, awesome. I'm not here to criticize anybody's approach whatsoever. I'm only telling you what works for me and what I've learned and what I've seen people, how they move from being stuck into production. And that is once they start to get into this idea of writing as an invitation, you can invite yourself to write. You can do it or not do it. And it's not as simple as what I'm saying. It's actually kind of deep and profound. It's kind of David Carradine with the pebble. There's some Zen moment here about what I'm trying to teach you, but it's everything in terms of freeing you up from being stuck. If you look at writing as an invitation, invite yourself to write. What's there? What do you have to share? What do you have to say? How are you going to move from that place of feeling paralyzed? When you start to invite yourself to write, and it comes from that place, things open up. So I'm going to ask, let's go to Judge. Judge, I think you can talk about this. Judge is somebody, he started my writing class when I offered it during the pandemic. He showed up every night, every Tuesday, kept coming. And this was one of the things that I saw that shifted for him, because he was somebody that writes a lot of professional kinds of correspondence. He had a blog that was very kind of formal, but he kept coming. And I'm going to say now, he resisted everything I taught about poetry. And guess who's coming out with the poetry book? Who invited themselves into that poetry book? So Judge, tell me about and tell us about the difference between the expectation and the invitation and what that did for you.
Thanks, Jenna, and thanks for having me. Well, first of all, the invitation of putting out a poetry book was, like you said, I resisted. In fact, I looked at poetry as one of those things that had to sound a certain way, had to look, had to feel, had to rhyme, had to this, had to that. So, right away, I'm setting these expectations about what poetry is. And through perseverance, through practice, and just just, allowing myself to be present and work on the process of poetry, I started to, take little bites and realize, oh, this is tasty. And then as I chewed on it more and more and started to digest this information and the process, it really started to enrich my writing, and that barrier against poetry just became smaller and smaller. And those expectations I looked at more as invitations. And so now, as you mentioned, I'll be publishing my first book, poetry book, that's called Live, Love, Leo. And I'll be doing that also through BookBaby. So that to me is something huge that I never would have expected. The one thing I had to realize is I had to be present for myself. I had to allow myself to look past what I had previously learned what poetry was.
And what you expected of yourself, I want to add.
Yes, absolutely. Especially what I expected of myself. And so now I find my invitations anywhere and everywhere. I do a lot of my writing at the gym. I allow myself, believe it or not, I sit on a stationary bike and I swipe right. So I produce a lot of work just when I'm moved at any moment. I took a flight to Europe for vacation a couple of months ago and was writing while I was on the plane. So it's just like I find the invitation in everything to write.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. And it may sound like a simple thing, but it's not. It's profound. And the invitation is in terms of an approach. Instead of an expectation, you're welcoming yourself into the conversation that you're going to have with yourself. That will shift. If you're stuck, invite yourself. You can do it or not. And figure out what kind of writer you are. I am not the kind of writer. If I have to sit down every day at 7 a.m. and do my morning pages, I will not do them. That's an invitation to, use the word again, to feel bad about myself, like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do because of the expectation. And the more you tell me that I have to do something, the less I'm going to want to do it. It's just straight up how it goes. And you know what? I want to also share, you cannot beat yourself into submission when it comes to creation. It doesn't work. Imagination and creativity is organic, and you have something to say. You have something to invite yourself into as far as this conversation. You cannot beat yourself into submission into creation. It doesn't work. Your heart needs to be invited, welcomed. It's waiting for you. You have words to share. It wants you. It needs you. And as you start to develop this, it's a relationship. What we're doing is reestablishing a relationship with ourselves through writing. And writing through the conversation builds trust. The more you build trust with yourself, the more you show up for yourself, the more that you invite yourself, the more expressive, creative, imaginative, and productive you're going to be. I promise you. I promise you this. So it really is about rethinking and relearning this relationship. You're developing a relationship with writing, and that writing is a relationship with yourself. And that's something to really think about. And so self-connection is another part of my 4 C's. This would be the third thing. How does it relate to finishing your book? Well, the more connected you are, the more you invite yourself, the least amount of expectations that you have. When you start to lessen judgment, you're going to find this freedom. You're going to be writing. To finish a book, we have to write. I mean, the logistics of how to get it done are there. There's plenty of information out there about how to tactically finish and logistically finish a book. But what most of us are stuck on, and I'm not dismissing the tactical or logistical, but what most of us are stuck is like, we don't know where to go. We don't know where to start. We're overwhelmed. It's a tsunami of expectations and judgment and procrastination, and the cycle continues and continues and continues. So connecting to yourself is going to open up that creativity, flow, and motivation. So how do you do that? The third C, and I will share my screen again. is the third C. We talked about clarity. Why are you writing? Confidence. What stops you from writing? So this one, hey, there's Cindy. There she is in Santa Fe writing. So connection is for creativity, flow, and motivation. So where do you begin? Number one, write what you care about. That may seem simple, but we're trying to write about all these things we think other people are going to care about. But what do you care about? If you were going to make a list right now or later today after this call or tonight, give yourself 5 minutes and write a list. What are the things you care about right now? For some people, people care about global warming. For some people, they care about what's going on politically. Some people care about how to make it through a day. Some people care about recovery. Some people care about finding ways to care for themselves while their son is incarcerated. I mean, the list goes on, but what is it that you care about? That's the first thing to identify this conversation with yourself, is knowing what it is that you actually care about. The other thing I want to say in terms of the self-connection is identify where you write from and why knowing this matters. So when we're writing, I always tell people, we're writing from the head. We're so conditioned to write what we know intellectually, what we know, that we're unable to connect with what it is and who it is we really are. So once we start to write from that place of the head, we're lost in a lot of ways. And again, not if you're going to write a term paper or a dissertation or, but that goes back to knowing the application of what you're writing. But in terms of where you are with yourself, identifying where you write from and knowing why that matters. So one of the things that I teach a lot and help people in classes and when they come here is through prompts. And I have a very specific method that I engage people in that gets them out of their head and into this place I call the you-ness. YOU-NESS, the you-ness. That is the place where you are and where your conversation can spring from once you get out of fear, expectation, judgment. You start to build some confidence. You start to have this clear connection with yourself. You start to get motivated, and then the writing starts to get really amazing and really interesting. So I'm going to have Daniel, because he's done so awesome in learning how to connect to this place and what the self-connection has meant in terms of the writing and the surprises. So Daniel, would you mind sharing a little bit about what you know in this moment about the writing place and discerning the difference and how you are like completely opened up?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think for me, it's like when I first, my first session with Jana, she was kind of talking about the you-ness and the difference between, what's going on in your head and what's going on in your heart. And I didn't really, I was kind of like, what is she talking about? And she had me do this really cool exercise, where she said, first, I want you to write from the head, then from the heart, and then from the you-ness. And it really, that was really kind of the beginning of this really, frankly, magical awareness of different parts of me and different aspects of me, and not just, and then also parts of me, that were blocking my creativity, and through these invitations, that she gave me, I really started kind of, and then I would say after only about a month of working with Jana, I started just giving myself invitations and doing, poetry. And again, just like Judge, like I had never done really poetry. I was like, I was more into like writing short stories and things like that. But what really kind of, for me, the best part about all this is that I started to give myself gifts, and these gifts were essentially, I would write, I would sort of get away from my head and write from my Eunice. And all these things that would come out onto paper really didn't make that much sense, And I mean, it's similar to stream of consciousness, but it's definitely different because again, it's more of a conversation with yourself. You're not just whatever comes into your head, you're writing down. And so what I started doing is I would write something, and then I would like take 5 minutes or 10 minutes away, then I would come back to it, and then I would read it, and and I would read it from a different perspective, and it would give me new information that hadn't occurred to me, when I was writing it. And then I would do it a third time, maybe a fourth time. And what I started noticing was, even though as I was writing it, stuff wasn't necessarily making sense, once I started, understanding, and looking at it from a different perspective, I started getting a lot of really deep insights into myself, into, what was perhaps blocking me from writing.
And I want to add that now that you have that, I don't want to interrupt, but now you went from a place where you hadn't written in 20 years and your memories were collecting in a tuxedo shop that you used to work at. And when you wrote in past time, decades had passed and you hadn't written at all. And now I would say you feel completely free in your writing, and you're writing all the time, which is what we're trying to accomplish, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I would, yeah, I mean, that was really why I came to Jana, was I did a lot of writing in high school. I mean, from starting in the 6th grade, but I did a lot of writing, and it was always this writing I did was always fun and full of joy. But at a certain point in my 20s, I kind of stopped it, and I didn't really know why, but I didn't really have the urge to do it. And really, Jana sort of got me back in touch with, she basically showed me why I've been able to just essentially write and not stop. Like it used to just flow, and it just would come out, and I could just write essentially I wrote a rough draft for a book, and without even, thinking about it. Now I feel like I've definitely come back to this place where everything I write is effortless. I don't have this feeling of, oh, I should be writing today.
Or you're an imposter, but
or I'm an imposter. I mean, that was something that, we worked on a little while ago. I was a lot of times in my poetry lately, like a song lyric or a movie line will just appear in the poem. And at first, I told Jana, like, I don't know, I feel like I shouldn't be using other people's words. But then we have this really great talk about, I mean, there's nothing, everybody, uses other people's sort of work for inspiration. And I mean, hip hop lyrics, sampling. I mean, there's plenty of, examples of this. And once I sort of realized that I'm not plagiarizing by just sticking a song lyric in a what's 99% me, once I was able to sort of do that and let everything come out, I started getting really gifts. A poem I wrote a couple days ago, I got to the end of it and I was crying, and it was these tears of joy and tears of release, and it was just this great sort of thing. And I didn't even know why. When I was done, I had to kind of read it again, 2 or 3 more times and interpret it. And I think, for all of you out there who are trying to finish a book or start a book or get through the middle of the book, I think, it's everything, is getting in touch with your Eunice, understanding what these blocks are for everybody's got, different blocks, but they're all illusions. As far as I'm concerned, writer's block doesn't exist. I think it's one of those things where if you recognize and you figure out what those illusionary walls are and get rid of them, everything just comes and you'll love your work, and I think
All
that's,
right. Sorry. Sorry.
I could go on for an hour.
I know, but thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. And so I want to reiterate, because I want to be sure everybody's following my train here and getting out what I want. So how to finish your book in 2023. You got to be writing, right? So get clear. Why are you writing? What is that about? 2, confidence. How are you going to gain it, achieve it, deal with the expectations, judgments? 3, get connected to yourself. Figure out what it is you care about right from that place. And the last thing that we're going to talk about is community. And before we move on to that last thing, I know that you're all in different places of where you are in your writing. I understand. I had 900 people register, and those are 900 stories waiting to be written at some juncture of that pathway. Some of you maybe have never started. Some of you are fumbling along with an outline. Some of you are looking at how to navigate a pile of slush of words that you have, and you don't know how to organize it and get it back together. Some of you may be almost done and you don't feel like there's something yet that's tying it all together, and you need some cohesion. So we're all always going to be at a different place in our writing path. Don't compare yourself. Don't sit there and say, well, everybody else on this call is probably already done and I haven't even written a word. This is your story. This is your purpose. This is your invitation into yourself. This is your gift. This is your gift that you're going to someday, whenever that day comes, pass along and impart and share with others who need to hear your words. I don't understand what it is about writing that we get so far away from ourselves. We get so far away from what we care about. We get so far away from feeling like what we have to say or who we are is worth it or enough. And it's a struggle, I want to acknowledge that, but I also want to acknowledge that you're here. And the thing is, we have to show up for ourselves over and over and over and over again when we're writing, especially to complete a book. Because if you knew what you would know now of all the things that it takes, we might not even do it, right? I mean, it can be very tedious at the end, especially with editing and whatnot. But I can look back and see that I did it. It's one of the most profound and beautiful and wonderful accomplishments I've ever had, short of giving birth to 2 children and getting my master's degree at 52 years old in creative writing. That was a pretty substantial thing for me too. But you showed up for yourself, and that's what it's going to require, showing up for yourself, being in a conversation with yourself, trying to find ways into your freedom by inviting yourself in to your conversation and recognizing that people are always going to have what they want to have to say about it, but you just do you. And my favorite example of this is Forrest Gump. In the movie, he goes running, right? He puts on his shoes and he just goes and he runs, and he's running across the country, and he's not really, he's got no agenda. He just felt like running, so he ran. And as he runs, people glom on. People glom on, and they end up like projecting their cause onto him. Save the whales, no fracking, stop the drilling and all this stuff. But he was just doing himself. So that's my point, is that we just go and we do ourselves, and that's all we can do, right? So just keep running, keep writing, keep staying in conversation with yourself, keep connecting, keep clarifying with yourself over and over again. So the last thing that has made a huge difference in me completing my book was community. Now, I know that sounds like a simple thing. I am not somebody who belongs in certain writing groups where they sit there and they workshop my work. I couldn't stand that. It wasn't for me. Now, if it's for you, awesome. I know a lot of writers out there that have groups, they do that. They exchange work and they sit and they workshop and critique. My skin wasn't that thick, I don't think. And I was really so committed to this idea of being in a conversation with myself in terms of like the actual writing. I didn't need people to squelch on what I was doing with their feedback and their thoughts and their projections and their red pens. So finding a community of writers, but not just any writers, it's writers that you resonate with. That's the difference. And so community, let's bring on Andre, because I want to talk about the community of BookBaby, because they do offer a lot of support and resources. And then we're going to finish up with just one more thing after this. So Andre, why don't you tell us about BookBaby and the community of writers that you gather and coalesce in one place?
All right. Thanks, Jana. Thanks all of you for joining. It was pretty amazing to see how many people were invested and engaged in this topic, and it was great. Thank you again, Jana, for putting this together. My name is Andre Kelly Ohana. I am the editor and the content manager of the BookBaby blog. You know, Jana made a point when we were preparing for this, and she said that BookBaby was somewhere that like could take you from thought to finish. And I thought that was a really nice way of summing up what our mission is. Make no mistake, we are a production house. We have a big facility in New Jersey where we've got our printing presses and our binders and our cutters. So we are a book production facility, and we do, you know, interior design and cover design. And we have a long-standing history as being a liaison between the independent creator and retail and marketing, or like, you know, putting your book into the marketplace. We also have author services like editing and cover design and ebook conversion and audiobooks and programs to help you market and promote your book. And we're built on the foundation that was Discmakers, that is Discmakers, which is a company that was founded in 1946. And Discmakers does for the independent music community what BookBaby does for the independent author community. And I can tell you from, you know, 26 years ago, when I first walked through the doors, I was blown away by just how many people in there were creatives, musicians, songwriters, writers, graphic artists. So we all like really understand the creative process. We understand what it means to you to create this book, what it took for you to get to the place where you got a manuscript ready for publication, like all of what you put of yourself into this project. And I feel like, you know, we strive to be a resource for you in all stages of this journey of being a writer and being an author. I mean, this webinar is a great example. You know, if you're just trying to figure out how to finish your book, I know you're not coming to us next week with a book in hand. So when you are ready, we're here for you. And in the process, we're here to, you know, guide you along the way. I think the blog is also a very like obvious example of that. The blog has got content about the craft of writing, about the industry, about book production, about marketing and promotions. So a little bit of everything to sort of guide you through, you know, the journey that you're about to embark on as a writer. We will be, after this webinar, you'll be getting an email. We're going to send everybody a $100 off for a cover design. So you'll get a code for that. We, like Jana said, also, we're going to be posting this on our YouTube channel. So you'll be able to revisit this webinar. So when you're ready, we're here for you. And we get the struggle, we get the joy, we get the whole process of this journey. And, you know, can't wait to share it with you guys.
Thank you so much. So speaking of community, and I recognize we've only had an hour, and maybe you were thinking you were going to come and get the 5 tips of the logistics of how to finish your book. And I understand that everybody's at a different place, but for me, I want you to just approach your writing with just a little bit of a more openness and willingness and possibility. And that's how you finish your book is when you get out of your own way, of course, but there's more to it than that. There's more to it than that. The resources are out there. BookBaby has an amazing library of resources, but when it comes to community, this is what I want you to know. Having contact with like-minded writers. So one thing that I'm going to offer, since we cannot talk about everything that there is to know, is a writers group that, you know, can give you a deeper dive into what it is that I teach and how I teach. And because mostly what I do is for love and service, and I'm so committed and I have such passion. So it's only going to be $97 for an entire year. And we're going to do guided monthly writing sessions. And I will provide tactical advice. I am a psychic writing advisor, and I give intuitive feedback about what's keeping people stuck. And so we're going to have this group. If you feel called, it may not be for everybody, but if it's for you, it's going to be fantastic. Once a month, we're going to gather, and I'm going to lead and teach and guide with my prompt-driven work to help people find freedom out of their fear, because we can only do so much in this hour. But this is going to be an amazing group. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we can have conversations, and I can share more about how to get the clarity, the confidence, the connection, and we're going to create a community. It means something to me that you're here right now. And so what I want to do is I opened up the chat, and I want to know, because my gift really for you guys to be here, because I'm like teaching right now. So I didn't get to see. I want you to put in the chat where you're from, because I got registrations from all over the world, and I'm going to come back to this chat. And I'm going to look at this chat and see where you're from, where in the world you're from. Maryland, Seattle, San Diego. Hey, Deborah. Virginia, Portland. Hi, there's Jeff. Good to see you. Mexico. Woo woo. Oh my God, this is so exciting. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much. So the other things I want to offer to you are a couple things. One is I'm going to provide a link to all my BookBaby articles on the blog that really talk about my philosophy. What are prompts? How do you invite yourself into writing prompts? How do you write without purpose? How do you enter into poetry? How do you think about getting your thoughts down and organized? How do you draft an outline? Like, I talk about a lot of different things, and I realize I'm upfront. My approach is not for everybody. I mean, basically, I tell people to unlearn everything they've learned about writing, which seems counterintuitive, but that's what it takes, at least from my experience, is helping people find another pathway by adjusting the approach of how they even engage with writing, and that it's a conversation and what it can do. And it can be so meaningful, so rich, so unimaginably informative in your own life. And your words are your stories. And we need those stories. We need to be connected, especially now. That's where our humanness exists. So I'm going to send a PDF that's going to have some links to these blog articles. You can also, if you want, come and join me in Santa Fe. Let's write together in this beautiful place. And we can really dive deep into what it is and help you fulfill and realize the dream. That's what it is for me. The fact that I have Cindy, whose book is now getting ready to be published after 20 years, she's fulfilling a dream. And so that means something to me. Okay, so let's see where else everybody's from. Georgia, Florida, Bahamas. Woo, that's fantastic. Yes, if a person can't make the monthly session recordings, the monthly writing sessions, they will be recorded. And I'm going to use these 90-minute writing sessions to do prompts. Like, we'll do an exercise. I'll say broom, and you'll write, and something will come up, and then we'll discuss. And it seems like the people that come to these writing groups to form a community really start to get inspired and opened up. But I don't want you to think it's only just about creativity, because it is, but we also need productivity. So in my world, productivity and creativity go side by side. And sometimes I'll talk about logistics of how do you even go about thinking about writing an outline, and I will guide you through that because we need that too. And other times I'll work on purely the creative and inspirational level and help you tap into this expression that's waiting, but that's stuck and that you don't know where to begin. So yes, Jim, if you can't make the monthly sessions, they will be offered on recordings. Nonfiction writers are absolutely welcome. There was another question, are nonfiction writers welcome? Yes, I think everything that I teach really does apply. If you are writing fiction or nonfiction or autofiction or poetry or anything, because everything that we write comes from us. Doesn't matter how we apply it. Blog posts, they come from me, even though I know I'm writing a journalistic type of, an article or something. It has the purpose. Let's see if there's any other questions. Let's see, we're talking about BookBaby. Oh my God, Mark Rossman, Carthay Center Circle. Yes, indeed. Hey, how's it going? There's, let's see who else, Vancouver, Scotland, woohoo. South Africa, Colorado. I'm so happy to hear that. I got a comment from somebody. This was wonderful and inspiring. Thank you. The other thing I want to encourage you, if you want more webinars like this, if you want BookBaby to provide this information, let us know. Let BookBaby know. They were kind enough to partner with me and give me the platform to reach you. And so for me, it's all about sharing and information and inspiration. And so if this is something you want more of, let us know. Guam, there's somebody from Guam. That's very exciting. Listen, I'm just as much of a kid when it comes to this as you are. I was just as scared, just as unsure. And I'm a writer at heart, just like you. And so we're in this together, and it means something to me. It means something to me to teach people how to find themselves in their own writing. It means something to me that we can do it differently. We don't have to beat ourselves into submission to get into creation. That doesn't really work. We can find discipline. That can be part of the equation, but getting clear, getting your confidence, finding that connection to yourself and building a community. Come and join me in this community. And you're going to get a follow-up email that will have a link. The offer is only going to be good for 7 days because I'm going to close the group. It's going to be a private group. So you're only going to have 7 days to be part of this group. And the first session is going to be Monday, January 30th. So anyway, does anybody else have any other questions? I'm going to just take a quick look. I'm glad you're motivated, Alana. I'm glad you're motivated. You're welcome. I'm hoping that you will find everything that you need to connect with yourself and to finish your book in 2023. We've got Florida, Connecticut. Let's see. Does anybody else have any other questions? I'm glad you love this webinar, Kendall. I'm so happy. I'm so happy, you guys. I've had a really good time, and I hope I want to see your faces. I was so bummed. Well, not bummed. I can't hold a webinar with 300 little mini micro things. But if you come and you join me in this writing circle that we're going to do, it's called Next Level Writing Group. That's what I'm calling it, because we're going to take your writing to the next level. But if you come and you join me on the Monday night session, I will see you. I will see your face. And I am promising I will do everything I can to support your growth, inspiration, connection, and production so that you can finish your book in 2023. So I'm going to read each and every comment. You are so welcome, Christine, for being part of this. It's been a total joy. Your manuscript is done. Let's see. Anyway, oh, the time frame for the sessions beginning on January 30th. Thank you for that question. It's going to be 90 minutes. And the structure of it is we're going to write. You're going to get some guidance. You're going to get some real-time coaching. You can ask me questions in real time. And then we're going to have a Facebook group that we can correspond and connect your challenges, struggles, heartaches, headaches. And I'm here to support you through psychic writing advice, through logistical coaching, and through support, because I know I'm here to walk this walk with you. All right, well, I think that's it. So there are links in the chat, if you wouldn't mind. Lori Kimball said, I read Me, My Selfie, and I, and what a connection I felt. Thank you for sharing your story. This webinar was perfect. Thank you. Oh, that's so great. I'm so glad you read my book. See, even as an author, somebody reads my book, I feel very good and very honored. Thank you so much. So let's see, Kevin will post the next level writing group. That offer is only good for 7 days, and then I'm going to close the group. The article links for all of my articles on BookBaby is also posted in the chat. And that talks a lot more about my philosophy. If you can't make the weekly or the monthly writing group, if you can't make the retreat, it's fine. When the time comes, you will. But in the meantime, I've written a lot of articles on BookBaby's blog to talk about my unique philosophy. And hopefully it resonates with you too, because I believe inspiration is what matters. Information's everywhere. What we need is inspiration, connection, and clarity. So thank you so much for being with me today. I've had such a good time. I cannot wait to read these comments, and I will send you a follow-up email with all the relevant resources and links. Thank you so much.